Hey everybody, it's Michael. Hope you're all doing well. I've got to show you this. Hold on a second. Just earlier this morning when I came into campus, it was sunny. Now it is, I don't know if you can see this out my window, it is snowing sideways. Sideways. Just freak blizzard came out of nowhere. Literally, we went from sunny and beautiful this morning, a little bit brisk. All of a sudden the cloud showed up, and no sooner did the cloud show up, we end up getting sideways snow. Weather is crazy, man. Well, anyway, I just wanted to give you a sort of a quick update here as I adjust the camera. Please excuse me. So, anyhow, this week we are talking about, first of all, I hope you had a great spring break. I had a really good spring break. Obviously, I'm back from Australia. Tried to make a video on the road, but internet was such that it was kind of unreliable, and I was in different cities all the time. One really interesting thing that I did down there that I thought I'd tell you about was that we're trying to do a community of practice. And I think this actually relates pretty well to the kind of work that we do in 509. And it relates because, precisely because what we're trying to construct is a group of individuals from multiple institutions, multiple locations, that are coming together around some sort of common interest. And the idea is that we want to, rather than work within one agency to solve a problem, we're trying to work across different groups, government groups, public sector groups, NGOs, independent companies, and different whatnot, to work on different innovative strategies for development. Now, down at this workshop, their biggest concern is actually in the area of invasive species. It's a big issue affecting rural communities and agricultural communities in Australia. There are lots of invasive species, especially things like dogs, even dingo dogs. No kidding. And wild pigs, which is also a problem in the United States. They have a lot of problems with rabbits. They have a lot of problems with invasive weeds. And issues like this. So we're talking about pretty macro fauna here. Well, there's a lot of ethical issues involved in that too. And really what everybody's looking for are new strategies to effectively deal with the problem that we can all feel pretty good about. Well, my job as a community development and outreach guy is not to come to the table with a solution. In fact, I don't really know much about invasive animals at all. It's been a learning process for me. But the idea is to bring people together in a way that they can allow their perspectives to align meaningfully and discuss fairly democratically how they can come up with a more innovative solution than what they've done in the past. This is really central to a lot of our community development practice. It's not that you necessarily have to get everyone at the table to agree. The important thing is to get everyone at the table to think openly, to feel safe sharing their ideas, and to feel like they were part of the process going forward, that they can reconnect with the group, and that they actually were taken seriously, even if the group ends up saying, well, we want to go in a different direction. At least they understood that their perspective was considered, and they may have a stake in what's going on moving forward. So this is a bit of democracy building that we tend to do within community development, and that's exactly what this was. We were all meeting in Melbourne and talking about how to solve these issues as a group, instead of as a bunch of fractionalized institutions. Well, let's relate that to this week's topic. This week we're actually talking about planning. Planning is something that, depending on where you go, it can be extremely centralized. Especially if you go to Europe, local planning is actually, it's actually very centralized and done under very, national level guidelines typically, or even regional level and provincial level guidelines. When you get to the United States, we're one of the only places where planning for local development is actually considered a local issue, with local decision-making processes often taking root. And there's multiple levels of planning. I mean, you have basic general federal codes that are, really relate more to the use of public lands. You have state-level codes and state-level planning documents. That's what this week's assignment is about, what guides planning at your state. And then you have varying degrees of local autonomy and power. Now it's interesting, depending on where you go, you'll find different levels of local power and local influence over the planning process. So for example, If you're hanging out in Maryland, for example, or even better, Louisiana. Louisiana doesn't really have counties, they have parishes, right? They're basically the same thing. But each parish in Louisiana has a lot of power over decision-making processes of how local planning is going to take place. If you get to the municipal level, municipalities actually have very, very little power. They might take care of things like issuing parking tickets or taking care of minor local issues and whatnot. But most of the power in here is at the parish level, including for things like school districts and whatnot. If you go to New England, it's the opposite situation. Counties are almost more of a ceremonial body up there. They're really, counties tend to have the courts. You'll have a county courthouse. You'll have a couple of county agencies, things like maybe an economic development agency or public welfare agency of some sort, but almost everything happens at the town level. Towns are very important in New England, and they are the ones that actually have final control through a town meeting process of determining how land is going to be used and how we're going to plan for land, right? So why is planning important? Well, think about it. If you look at the lessons that we've had, right, and if you look at the kinds of things we're studying in this course, we're studying population, land use, municipal finance, right? Municipal finance, obviously, we might want to plan a lot of different things. If we haven't figured out what it's going to cost us financially in the long term, then we really haven't done our due diligence. In terms of land use, what happens if we don't plan for land use? You could probably think of communities that haven't done so, that have no zoning laws, and where things are kind of a free-for-all. Well, if it's a low population, low density area, like a really distant rural area, oftentimes it's just private landholders taking care of their land and there's no problem. But when you start to get more of a critical mass of individuals, all of a sudden the need for planning starts to arise. Why might that be? A lot of it comes from the intractability, or what we might call in the economics world, the tragedy of the commons. This is what happens when lots of people in a small area try to all pursue their own individual self-interest, and everybody as a result ends up being worse off. So I'm going to try to take as many resources from the area as I can, but so are my neighbors, and we haven't figured out a fair way to take all the resources, and we end up destroying all the resources in the area. You know, maybe over-extracting the land, over-farming the land, and then we end up all being worse off because we have destroyed our entire resource base, which is the whole reason we're there in the first place. Planning can help to avoid these kinds of situations and can also provide a real anchor for issues of intractability that say, hey, we agree that this is how we're going to manage the resources, manage the land, manage the finances, and manage especially population growth in an area. As we do have more people coming in, we know and agree on how we're going to move forward. And the nice thing about good plans is that they can be revisited from time to time to be able to change and remain dynamic within the changes that are occurring in the community. It's all part of the process. So this week is all about planning and why planning is important. And in your papers, I'd like you to focus on why you think state level planning is important. How much autonomy did they give to individual counties and or municipalities? And why do you think they do that culturally? Is there a history of local action in this place? Do they want to have stricter controls over growth? How does a high population, an area with a very high, very dense population, differ from, say, an area with a very low, very dispersed population at the state level? Let's say we're comparing New Jersey with Wyoming. Why might their planning documents be different? Consider this as you're writing your paper this week, and we can certainly talk about it. We'll have more discussions about planning in the weeks following and how this also relates to sustainability. But planning, oftentimes it's a good thing because a lot of people in a lot of communities make plans, they end up in a 3-ring binder, and when you bring it up, they have to blow the dust off of it. It's always good as a community development professional to go into a community and say, let's start with the plan you have, even if you haven't seen it in a long time, and we'll see how relevant it is so we can come to a better agreement about how to move forward. It's great to see you. I'll be back in touch very soon. Look forward to talking to you online.